some others joining us as they get logged in here in the next couple of minutes. So I'll let them in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Just kind of a reminder that it works best if you can keep yourself muted during the presentation so that your background noise doesn't, kind of go over Maria's presentation. And then at the end, we will have an opportunity for some questions, and we'll kind of go through how you might do that when the time comes. But to get us started here this morning and keep us on time, I'm going to turn it over to Maria Rapp.
Hello, everyone. Hey, anybody who was here a few weeks ago, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. You'll get a little bit of a repeat if you did come in live, but it's good information, so not too bad to repeat it. Just for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Maria Rapp. I'm a chiropractor, and I don't do fertility treatments. So we'll start off with that. I work with Dr. Hogan. Dr. Amy Hogan in Salina is what's called a medical consultant. And so what I do is practitioner work. I'm called a fertility care practitioner. And what I do is teach women how to chart. And then if we see problems in the charting or something that is of concern, well, then I can refer you to Dr. Hogan, who does diagnostic testing and treatment. So I am simply the conduit to get you to pay attention to your wonderful fertility. And the reason I started teaching 10 years ago is a big part of it, well, part of it is Dr. Hogan, but part of it is that it is a system, this Creighton model system that we are involved in, deals naturally with the body. And this is something that, of course, I live. This is my life, is helping people to identify problems in their bodies and not just cover it up. You know, in my chiropractic world, it's pain. If you come in with pain, I'm not just going to say, okay, we're just going to give you a pill to get rid of the pain. I'm saying, what is going on that's creating this pain? Let's fix it. Let's fix it, okay, and naturally. So this is the same system. It's basically the exact same way of thinking, which is very appealing to me. And that is, if we have a fertility issue or we just are curious about our fertility, let's learn about it and let's identify if there is a problem and fix it. And this isn't something that's super common in our world. And I was finding that out even with dealing with a lot of my female patients, because we would talk about cycle issues and a lot of pain involved with the cycle issues, a lot of problems involved with the cycle issues. And I wasn't, highly trained in it. So that's when I started exploring other options for myself as well, and natural options. So it just was something that worked in very continuously with what I do during my day job, which is the chiropractic gig. My husband and I are both chiropractors, and we have an office in Salina. And that's where I do my classes and meet with clients for teaching the system. So I use the system. I've been teaching for about 10 years now. And even growing up Catholic, I never heard of this. And this is part of the reason also why I started teaching it, is because why didn't I hear about it? Why wasn't I told that there was an option that was church approved and that is accurate and well studied, well documented? And so basically the Holy Spirit drew me into it for sure. And I became involved in teaching it then. I started using it and then teaching it for our diocese in Salina. So having used it right at first, 10 years ago, I was still cycling. The reason I'm talking about menopause today is because a lot of women don't realize that this isn't a system that's just used for achieving or avoiding pregnancy. That's one of the big things that it shows. But once you begin charting, number one, I'm teaching you how your body works. We're never taught that our body is something brilliant, it's something beautiful, and it's something that we need to take care of. This fertility thing is not something that's gross and yucky and painful and just something that we need to hide or shut down. But that's what society has always taught us, and our daughters and our nieces and all of our friends. So this is something that I did not approve of. It is a gift. Our fertility is a gift, and we are to take care of it. And in order to take care of it, you kind of have to know how it works. So in my intro sessions, that's what I teach, how your body works, and then how we can use the system to monitor how your body is working. Maybe it's not working the best. And that's why I have a lot of ladies coming in all ages. I mean, I have preteens that come in, I have teenagers that come in, I have every age group. But talking about menopause today was my experience, and that is continuing to use this system beyond the age of conception and into menopause. Because what do we hear? Well, first of all, what is menopause? Because when you think of pause, this is why I wanted to name it this. You think of pause, well, it's not just pausing. So in the medical world, pause means an interruption or a rest. Well, there's a lot of that going on in perimenopause where it's interrupted and you think it's resting and then it comes back and then it's back and forth and it's kind of maddening. But really in Latin is where the pause means cessation. It means we're stopping. Meno is month. Okay. So your monthly friend not coming back. So officially the definition is you haven't had a menstrual period for a year. And I'll tell you that this month of April was the month that I hit my 1 year. I was watching, I was waiting, and I was so excited about it. And that's something that is highly unusual. This is something I really encourage is you need to welcome this. You need to anticipate it. You need to understand this is part of how we roll. This is part of how we're created, is that eventually that part of your life cessates, it stops. Now it tends to be a little unruly as it's trying to get to that point. And that's kind of where the charting really helped me. So you go to amenorrhea, which means you have no periods, but you have to have 1 year between that last period. So I had what I call the menoparty when I hit, it was April 24th. I will never forget it. I was 51 years old, and this is my 57th year right now. The average age is 51 and a half, but boy, we're seeing a lot of women much earlier hitting this perimenopause because of some synthetic hormones and some toxins in our environment. But basically, as I was going through my charting, I was also having symptoms. And so as you're charting your cycles, you can be writing in what the cycles are looking like and then what symptoms you're having as the chart is changing. And let me talk about charting a little bit because I have so many women who come in and say, oh, I've been monitoring my cycles with an app. Let me tell you, it's not the same. Okay. I haven't found one app that somebody has come into me using that has the detail and has the specifics that charting has. Once again, learning about how your body works, we monitor a bunch of different biomarkers. So not just your periods. Okay. We do monitor those periods and how much bleeding you're having and what kind of bleeding, even what color. Brown bleeding is something that's not uncommon when cycles change. So we're monitoring that, but there are also other biomarkers like mucus discharge, like the number of days after you ovulate. There are ways that we can look at your chart to see something going on and to see things changing. And that's what's the big help in charting is if you start to look at what your normal patterns are, then you can start to see the changes, maybe even before you have symptoms. I had started to have some symptoms as my cycles were changing. So what I did is I brought my chart in to Dr. Amy, and she went ahead and did some testing to see what my hormone levels are. And not just on day 14, y'all. Okay, because this is another thing that frustrates me is, okay, just come in on day 14 or day 22 and let's see what's going on. Well, your day 14 and your day 22 are totally different from somebody else's and from somebody else's. And so that's highly, highly inaccurate. To me, that's lazy doctoring. It's not doctoring. Doctoring, you're supposed to be specific. You're supposed to have some very specific things that you're looking at and looking for. And this is what Dr. Amy does with the chart is that we're seeing what's going on day by day by day. So we're not just saying, okay, day 22, we're saying, let's go when you have a peak day, which is explained in my class and which when we meet, we talk about come in, if we're checking progesterone, say, we'll come in at peak plus 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. And let's draw your blood and see what your levels are. There's a very specific pattern your body should go through if you are ovulating normally and your corpus luteum is doing the right thing. So that is specific, okay? That's what I want you to understand is you don't have to just go with very basic stuff and, oh, everything looks fine. Oh, and we check your thyroid and it looks fine, but you're miserable. You know your bodies to some extent. You know that you're not feeling normal and the blood work, if you're not specific, can show that. So One of my favorite stories is when I first was learning how to teach women to chart. Of course, my friends and family were my first victims of making them chart so that I could learn how to teach. And one of my friends, she was in her 40s and she started to chart, and she was having all these days, there was a little spot of blood here, there's a little spot of blood there, a little spot. And I was like, you know what, this isn't normal. She goes, well, I'm in my 40s, so things are going to start to go wacky. And I said, no, it's something different, and sent her to Dr. Amy. Well, she had a thyroid issue. She had blood work done at her general practitioner, regular doctor, but doing the specific kind of testing that Dr. Amy does showed a thyroid issue that then helped her transition to not having those bleeding days. And then now she's in menopause as well, was able to chart all the way through. So that's the great thing about charting. You're going to know week by week, month by month, what should be going on. And when things change, get into Dr. Amy. She can evaluate, okay, what's changing here, and maybe supplement with bioidenticals. Now, here's the other thing. What has messed us up as women in society is synthetic hormones, okay? Synthetic everything. But, it's alarming to me as a chiropractor having 14-year-old girls coming in on birth control pills for acne, for cramps, for bleeding, for cysts. To me, again, that's lazy. That is lazy. That's saying, okay, something's going wrong here. Let's just shut it down. What I tell my pain patients, when you're taking all these pain meds, well, that's your body is giving you signals. Hey, something's going on here. Pay attention. And what you're saying is, oh, the oil light just came on and that's annoying. So I'm going to put duct tape over that. It's exactly what you're doing. Is you're not taking care of the problem. You're taking care of that symptom. And I'm not saying everybody should be in pain. I'm saying, let's figure out where the pain is coming from. Let's figure out where that bleeding is coming from. Why are you having acne? Why are you having cysts? Why are you having so much cramping? If not everybody in the world has it, then it's not normal. Just because a lot of people do have it doesn't make it normal. So keep that in your mind. Just because a lot of women suffer horribly during perimenopause doesn't mean that that's normal. And it doesn't mean that's what you have to go through. It means you need to pay attention and address what you're seeing on this chart each time. Each time you see those changes, let's check and see what's going on. So Dr. Hogan uses bioidenticals, which are compounded that to act very specifically closely to what your normal hormones do. So they're not made in a lab that, creates an irritation. These synthetic hormones create an irritant and are messing with your body. These are something that work with your body and just help, if you're flatlined in progesterone, well, it just helps, gives you a little bit here so that you're not completely out of it, not completely having those issues. Some of those symptoms come from those hormones just going out of control. What happens in menopause is your ovaries basically decide to retire. They're saying, okay, it's time for us just to slow down and stop because we're to the age where we're not going to be making some babies anymore. So it starts to slow down its activity, but your brain is still saying, hello, come on, let's get going. And so it's sending all these big hormones there that start to react and make your body a little bit loopy. So after menopause, I had some hot flashes. What I really started with was that fun little gaining weight around your middle. I'm a huge exercise advocate. I love to exercise. I'm that weirdo. And I've always exercised and could basically eat about whatever I wanted and still, keep the weight down. Well, after menopause, them hormones, y'all, when that goes off, that creates a different environment for your body where it doesn't act the same as it did before. So I started noticing tight fitting pants and just having that bloating kind of feeling. So I did change my diet a little bit, started going lower carb, doing more fasting at the suggestion of Dr. Hogan. And, but we also checked my hormones because I was in that menopause phase and perimenopause as well. So by supplementing a little bit, first I did essential oils, and let's talk about progesterone creams and essential oils, because some women do come in to me saying, oh, I've just been using progesterone cream. Well, again, it's not very specific. You should not have progesterone during your entire cycle. So that should be something that you cycle normally when you're supposed to have progesterone. The essential oils, they can kind of help balance things out for a while. And so I did that for a little while. I also did done, and that really helped with the hot flash issue and just making me sleep better. So insomnia is another thing that can hit you hard with the hormone changes, and especially with hot flashes overnight. So these are probably the main complaints that women have: is the fatigue, the hot flashes, the irregular periods, heavy bleeding. And I mean, it's not to minimize it, it's a lot. And when I was trying to work for a living and be a wife and a mom and going through all that, it's kind of tough. So the targeted hormone evaluation, once I did hit where the acupuncture and oils weren't helping as much, then that's where we targeted the specific hormones, and Dr. Hogan created what's called a troche. So the troche is just kind of it's in a little waxy substance that the bioidenticals are in. You can either do them orally. I actually did them vaginally because one of the big things I had was vaginal atrophy. So it made intercourse very uncomfortable. And so we decided to try just putting it intravaginally. And so that's what I do, just every night. The troches are about the size of a chiclet, probably part of my fingernail here. And I actually break them into 4 pieces. So I have a very, very small amount that I use that got rid of all the hot flashes, got rid of all the vaginal atrophy, has helped me with energy, has helped me with sleep. Just all of it is very good in balancing. And so that's what I want to encourage you guys is understand that you don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. The reason why your body starts to go a little haywire could be these hormones going out of whack. Now, let me talk about some other things besides the hormones. The charting is very important, but at the same time, like I said, I changed my diet around a little bit. I am a sugaraholic. I just am. So I just was able to back away. As Catholics, we're very good at mortification. We're very good at suffering. And so I just lifted it up to the souls in purgatory. If I wasn't going to have that sugar that I really wanted, cinnamon rolls and donuts are going to be the death of me. But what I do is I have a little bit. Okay. I'm able to get away with just doing a little bit. But diet plays a big role. Anything higher carb, higher sugar is going to spike your insulin. That's going to create inflammation. And don't we already feel like we're just a puffy mess? The last thing we need is to add inflammation to all of that. So just changing your diet, even just a little bit, can be a big help. The other thing that tends to happen after you have the hormones, or while the hormones are changing, is you lose muscle mass. And this is huge. So really the best thing to do is to start in your 20s and 30s and getting a little resistance exercise, getting some weight training, not heavy weights, and not for hours at a time. It really doesn't take that much. But doing a little bit of resistance exercise really helps to keep your muscle mass going. But again, diet-wise, you really need that protein. So I know society talks a lot about going plant-based. It's very, very difficult to get a good amount of protein going plant-based. So you really need to make sure that you're getting a great amount of protein. Dr. Hogan also does discuss a lot of that. But that's something I really didn't want. I don't really like to lift weights, but I just started doing. The most I use is 10 pounds. I use 3s and 5s for the most part. So it doesn't take much. I do 2 or 3 days a week. It doesn't take much. But being outside when the weather's nice, getting fresh air, getting sunshine, all of those things are super important. And I'm seeing a lack of that in our world too. We're shut inside with our technology and not going out and enjoying when we do have nice days, which I know in Kansas isn't as often as we would like, but whenever it is, you need to soak up that sunshine. I just did a seminar regarding sleep. And one of the big things is let your eyes be exposed to sunshine, because that triggers things in the brain chemicals that allow you then to have a more restful sleep. So be aware of that. You need to do a little bit of work in getting outside. Just take a walk in nature. It's relaxing, it's calming, and fresh air and sunshine really do help. Other things are watch out with alcohol, because one of my favorite things, kind of in honor of my mom, as weird as that sounds, she died 6-7 years ago, and she always loved her glass of red wine in the evening. And so I didn't like red wine, but I thought, well, just in her honor, I'll do a little bit, and just started having a little red wine every night. that can interfere with sleep. That can actually create insulin issues in some people. So be aware of having too much alcohol. Some people are sensitive to gluten, so watch that. But cravings are a big deal, and that's where actually having a good diet, higher in protein, higher in nutrients, can help. So you don't have the cravings all the time, getting the right amount of sleep. Do you ever notice when you don't sleep well, you're just starving the next day, and usually for junk? It's a thing. And that's part of your body trying to regain energy it should have gotten from sleep. So be aware of that. That can be partly hormonal, but partly maybe you're not having enough activity. Maybe you're eating too much sugar. There's so many things that can interfere with that. So sleep is a huge thing that I encourage you to address, just because it's a very basic thing. I can't believe how many people come into my office, and when I interview them on their first visit, they're taking a pill to sleep. You know, that's like your most basic thing is sleep. So fix that first. Fix that sleep thing first, and see if you can get that under control beforehand. So let's talk a little bit more about other things that the charting may be able to show you. When you do the charting and you're checking, every single day you're checking what's going on in your body, and several times a day as well. Other things that may crop up that you might not know about are changes in mucus patterns, or changes in bleeding patterns, or pain issues because of polyps. I mean, you could have polyps in the endometrium, which is the muscle of the uterus. Those can create problems in there. So again, that's something that needs to be addressed. That's not something you say, okay, well, let's give you a pill just to stop everything from working, and then you won't have that symptom. No, let's find out why you're having the symptoms. So that's one thing, is polyps. Fibroids are another thing in the uterus that can create bleeding issues or pain issues. And sometimes those can be managed with diet changes, and sometimes they can be related to some hormone issues. Every once in a while, they may need to be removed. So Dr. Hogan is a general practitioner. She does not do surgeries and procedures, but she has a group of people that understand the charting who can do procedures that may need to be done, should that be necessary. Thyroid issues, I mentioned, malignancies. So sometimes you have unusual bleeding or lots of bleeding because there's a tumor in there that is malignant. Well, you don't want to just give a pill that shuts that down. It's your body trying to tell you. And this is what I want to encourage you gals to do, is pay attention to what your body is saying. You know, don't just say, oh, well, I'm in my 40s, so I'm going to be having this unusual bleeding. No, you really don't. I want you to be aware of what's going on in your body. I want you to understand what's going on in your body, and I want you to be able to manage it. It's empowering. I mean, we talk about women empowerment. That's really empowering when you understand how your body works and can identify when there's an issue and actually work on fixing it. To me, that's the best of the best. So understand that learning how to chart, it really helps in so many different areas of your life. It actually does help also if you're married, to help you communicate with your husband, because these poor husbands, let me tell you, a husband's job is to fix things. And so here you're going around a hormone mess, moody, can't sleep, gaining weight, feeling miserable, and he can't fix it. He cannot fix it for you. And so this is a way that you can actually help your husband too, and help your relationship, is that you're working on fixing it so that your relationship can be better. Because, I remember even just with my menstrual periods, my mood would get so bad. And I distinctly remember thinking I'd snap at somebody or something would really irritate me. And I'm like, why did that even make me mad? Like in my brain, I'm like, that was weird. And then I remembered, oh yeah, we're coming up on the period. So you can start to be aware of when these things may be occurring. And perimenopause makes that trickier. So that's when it is. It's really good for you and everybody around you, believe me, for you to get those hormones managed, so you're not constantly on edge and constantly just not being able to deal. And particularly these past 2 years, man, oh man, I'm really glad I wasn't going through perimenopause during this whole craziness. It's so hard to cope with what's going on in our world right now. This is one way that you can take some pressure off of you and everybody around you, is to be able to identify, manage, and treat what's going on so that you can just ease yourself into menopause. It does not have to be a wild and crazy and horrific time. You can ease yourself back in. Sometimes in our sessions too, I tend to throw in a little bit of my chiropractic background too, because if I see there's a stress management issue, which is very, very common right now, we talk about that. We talk about the sleep, the exercise, the sunlight. How do you manage your stress? This is very important for you and for everybody around you. Is stress can make everything worse, including this. So managing your stress is important. You have to be doing something that you enjoy. You have to be doing something that relaxes you at some point during your day. And you have to have that faith in God that He has a plan. This is huge. And this is where a lot of our society is really struggling, flailing, is because they have no hope. They're in constant despair. When you know that God has a plan, and believe me and God have many discussions about this plan thing. I don't always agree with it, but somehow He seems to know more than me. Go figure. So we do have discussions, and it's very healthy to have a relationship with God where you're just, I haven't been struck by lightning yet, but I probably have been close, because I have been frustrated with God and probably angry with Him too. But we have the discussion just like you would have with your spouse, where we don't just let it fester. We say, okay, I'm going to trust in this. I'm going to trust in you. And that's a huge part of any sort of transition in your life. Any transition. And I talk to teenagers about, okay, you're going to be transitioning into, a relationship life. And then you're going to transition into a wife life. And then you're going to transition into a mom life. All of them have really challenging things, but all of them have good things. Menopause has some very challenging things physically, mentally, emotionally. The kids, maybe you're out of the house, you're empty nesters for the first time. That was hard. My babies were probably too much of my life. And I think God kind of was letting me know, you know what, I'm here for you. Your babies will be fine. And it definitely increased my prayer life when they left the house. But it was very lonely and a very big change, because we were always very active with our kids. They're both adulting now, and that is weird and wonderful. And we're at least able to see them. But that's another thing that can really mess with you during perimenopause and menopause. And that's why charting and at least getting the physical aspect under control really helps you to be able to manage all of the mental and emotional parts of menopause. It's not just the physical. The charting helps with the physical, but just having somebody to talk to who's been through it, I think is very helpful. And then again, giving you other ideas about other things to do, and maybe places where you can work a little bit more. It's not going to be a 24/7 kind of having to work all the time on this. I usually start women with one thing. What is the biggest challenge? And let's work on that first, instead of everything all at once where you get overwhelmed and then just give up. So with anything, we need to find out what are the biggest issues. The charting, of course, is something that I recommend for the physical issues, which helps you be able to manage all of the other issues. So, Lindy, do you have anything else to add to any of that?
For someone who's never charted, can you explain a little bit about, maybe what charting involves? If they're, kind of interested, because I heard you were talking about menopause, but this concept of charting, can you, what do they have to do to chart?
Yeah. So to get started, I do a session once a month where I teach you about how your body works. And this session is for anybody. So somebody who is, not cycling yet, somebody who is trying to achieve a pregnancy, somebody who's not even married, some women in perimenopause. So I kind of cover the whole gamut of what the system helps with. But I teach you how your body works. And then we teach you how charting can show you what your body is doing. So that session lasts about 40 minutes, depending on how chatty I get. As you can tell, I'm pretty shy and I don't talk much. But I tend to talk really fast because I'm from the East Coast, so I can really go fast. But around here, I have to slow it down a little bit. Everybody's nice and relaxed around here. But it takes about 40 minutes at my office. And we also go over the system. So then I talk to you about how you check those biomarkers for mucus, for bleeding, and then how you write them down. And we use paper charting, at least right at first. And I encourage the paper charting, particularly we who are more in perimenopause, menopause age, we're more used to that. The younger gals, it's a little bit more frustrating, but I always start them out with the paper charting so they understand how it all works. And then that night, if you're interested in going ahead and starting with charting, we have materials. We have a workbook that has an overview of basically the main points of the intro session that I do. And then it has information all written out on how you do your biomarker checks, what you're looking for, and then information on charting, as well as what we call SPICE. So this is something that I teach engaged and married couples is if you are using this system to try to achieve or avoid pregnancy, what I'm teaching you is what your fertile days are, what your infertile days are. So if you're trying to not achieve pregnancy, well, you don't want to use your fertile days for intercourse. You use your infertile days. So that's what I'm teaching you is your fertile and infertile days. And then from there, you decide how you want to use it. And young married couples, you can just change your mind month to month. Teachers love this system because they want to have their babies in May, right? And then we have the whole summer off. Well, you can't do that when you're on birth control pills. Sometimes it can take 6 months or more to get your body to start acting normally again. So to try to figure out how to achieve a pregnancy is much more difficult. But if you are using the system to avoid pregnancy, you just don't have genital contact during those fertile days, which is generally 6 to 8 days in a normal cycle. And that's what I want to emphasize is there's some women who don't have a normal cycle and they don't have many days that are infertile to be able to use if you want to avoid pregnancy. So during those days that you're not having genital contact, guess what? There's other things that you can do. And a lot of couples don't even understand this. Like, isn't it all about genital contact? Because that's what we hear in society. So what I talk about is spiritual, physical, intellectual, creative, and emotional. This is something else that we cover. What other things can you do other than genital contact? And, sometimes we get this, oh yeah, okay. So there is a little bit of discipline involved if you want to use this to achieve or avoid pregnancy. Now, this is also an issue with perimenopausal women. How many of us know somebody in their 40s who ended up achieving a pregnancy because their cycles do change. And if you're not paying attention and you're having intercourse, remember, the reason or the intercourse creates babies. Okay. We're lucky that it feels good, but its main job is to create babies. So when I have couples who come in and say, I can't believe I got pregnant, I say, why? Did you not have intercourse? Because that's what it's for. So we always welcome new life. However, it is something that can be very challenging and very stressful. Generally, it ends up being an incredible blessing for these couples who do achieve. However, if it is something, I have women who maybe have heart issues and are on a dangerous medication. And so achieving a pregnancy would be dangerous. That's a time that you really want to avoid any genital contact in your fertile days. During perimenopause, sometimes instead of having this nice, pretty 6 to 8 day period of time that you have fertile days, you have them here and here and here and here and here and here and here because your hormones are doing this and this. I think I can, maybe let's do it. Let's not, let's do it, so that can be a really big challenge and you can end up achieving a pregnancy when you're not expecting to. So that's another good reason for charting during perimenopause is you will know your fertile and infertile days. If you're having tons of fertile days, well, then you may need to fix that as your body is transitioning. So be aware that it works for a lot of different things, but that's how you go about charting. Once you purchase the materials, which are $25 for the workbook, chart, stickers, then we set up a time to meet individually. So the intro session is a group session. Then we meet one-on-one every 2 weeks until you have the system down, until you're comfortable with charting. And then monthly after that, just to see how things are changing. And maybe you need some help when you do go get blood work done if you do. So I'm always at your beck and call via text. I do this on my off time when I'm not seeing patients. So I have, you have total access to my texting where I can maybe text you in between patients or, just say, I'll call you at this point. But that's how it works. There's a small fee for when you meet with me individually and it's income based. So it's an investment of time and money right at first. And then afterwards, the benefits just far outweigh what you invest in it with the money.
Thank you, Marie. And I was actually going to ask about, the possibility of pregnancy during menopause. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that as well. Um, can you speak a little bit about, um, and I know like you're not Dr. Amy, right? But I think that even as practitioners, we kind of have a little bit of experience with this. Um, the balance between letting our bodies kind of naturally move into this and stop versus the bioidentical hormones and the supplementation to kind of regulate cycles. Where's that line and that balance between treatment versus just letting everything happen naturally?
Some women do just fine, just letting it happen naturally, even without bioidenticals. And like I said, that was me for about 3 years. I was able to manage it fine with diet and exercise changes and doing some acupuncture, doing some essential oils. So some women can do that all the way through and they breeze right through. And we all hate those women. I'm just kidding. But there are a lot of women who maybe have some, particularly being on birth control pills for long periods of time. Dr. Amy, I kind of interviewed her before I did this just to get a little information. And she did say that the birth control pill makes things a lot more difficult to recognize because it just messes with your system so much that you don't really know what's going on. It's kind of fooling you. So she does have a hard time figuring out what's going on and basically detoxifying somebody from birth control pills. So the synthetics definitely are not a good plan. And of course, we know some of the synthetic estrogens can create a cancer issue. So you really don't want to be doing that. Now, I will say, I was really worried. My mom had breast cancer. It was much later in life, but she did have breast cancer. So I was very, and still don't really want to do too much oral. But the more I read about the bioidenticals, the more actually the estrogens in there can be protective of breast cancer and up to 500 times protection for prevention of breast cancer. So that balance is really important. And I think just going for the minimum, that's what I was going for. What is the minimum that I can do to be able to manage things and be able to function? Because that was the thing, is the hot flashes weren't that big to me. The vaginal atrophy was. And so what is it that is the main thing? A lot of women can function just fine with hot flashes. They're not severe and not regular. But what is it that you want to accomplish? So you don't have to have huge doses. You don't have to have, maybe even, don't have to have it for many years. I have read that it's best to begin any kind of hormone supplementation within the first 10 years of menopause. So you don't want to wait too long because then the benefits aren't going to be able to be there. So it's the differences in the way people's brains function. That birth control pill will affect how your brain, the pituitary and hypothalamus, how they're communicating with the body. And so that's why it can make it trickier. But yeah, it's going to be a personal decision as to how much you do and what you're doing it for.
Great. One more question I have, if you're able to address it, and then we'll open it up to questions anyone else might have, is have you read about, talked with Dr. Amy about bone density and the importance that plays? I know because I work with her as well, she talks about the progesterone and how important and life-giving progesterone is for circulation and heart health and the bone density as well. So have you read much about that, or would you have anything you want to add in that area?
Right. Hormones in general, as we know, postmenopausal women are more prone to, as I said, sarcopenia, which is muscle loss, but also osteopenia, which is the losing of the density of the bone. Some of that can be done with physical exercise. If you have impact exercise, that stresses out the bones such that they'll say, oh, well, we better not thin out because she's still stressing us out. So that's going to be important. Using some gentle weights, doing some walking, some impact exercise. However, hormones do play a role. And so I know we talked about in training how progesterone, they call vitamin P. There's so many benefits of progesterone in women who are still cycling can enjoy those benefits. If anybody's ever been pregnant and had a good pregnancy, like after morning sickness, I felt better than I ever did in my life when I was pregnant. My hair was growing, my nails were growing, I was just feeling good. That's progesterone. And so for most women, the progesterone is what we tend to lack. And so then estrogen gets out of control because we don't have that progesterone there to help balance it out. So again, balance is what we're looking for. We're trying to ease our way. So you know, when progesterone goes way down, well, then all of a sudden the brain is just firing away and doing too much of estrogen. And so if we can just balance it out so that the brain's like, oh, okay, well, I can calm down. I can calm down. And then doctor will have the right avenue to take, because every woman is different. How long do we do this? And I get my blood work done every year. And so we're kind of checking what's going on, even with the bioidentical supplementation. How are things looking? Do we need to tweak it a little bit more? Even though symptomatically I'm doing great, let's see what's going on. Maybe we can back away a little bit more.
Great. Before I open it up to anyone to just verbally ask a question, we do have one in the chat, and it was, is there a recording of your seminar on sleep?
Oh, you know, my husband and I do a radio show. It's called Health Wrap. We do that every Saturday morning from 10 to 10:30 on KSAL. And yeah, we have recorded it. I'm trying to remember if we put it on our website, but I recorded actually what I learned from the seminar. It was a continuing education seminar that I paid for. So the seminar itself is not recorded, but what I gleaned from that seminar, I did talk about on one of our radio shows. So I'll talk to my staff and see if we can get a link on our website, which is rappwellness.com, RAPP wellness.com. See if we can put a link on there to that episode so you can listen to it. It's very interesting stuff. Very interesting and very crucial. I am so serious that you need to get that sleep thing taken care of.
Oh, thank you so much. Anyone else, if you have a question, feel free to just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask Maria your question.
Hi, Maria.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, I'm calling from Virginia. My question is I had a little bit, but a lot of it was just, having progesterone and estrogen in pill form thrown at me. And I have been dealing with these symptoms for a couple of years now. I mean, just fatigue. But the thing is I also suffer from mental illness too. So it's kind of hard to tease out what's the hormone issue, because I have everything that you say, the irritability, the snapping, and it's like, and then all my doctors are like, talk to your psychiatrist, talk to your, I guess my question is, do you do like telehealth? Because I have all these issues going on and nobody has really been able to help me. And it's super frustrating. And, your discussion about your conversations with God, it's like, I think I should have multiple thunderbolts thrown at me for what I've been saying, because I don't know what my purpose is. And I am struggling so hard. And I was wondering if you had any advice for me.
Absolutely. It's really not uncommon. Like I talked about, it's a huge transition. So in your mind, I'm hoping that you're normalizing it and saying to yourself, okay, this is supposed to happen. Maybe not the way it's happening, but understand that this transition is supposed to happen. What we do need to do, though, is find out what else is going on in your world. And so that can get really complicated. That's why, Dr. Amy is actually starting to do what's called DPC, direct patient care. She is transitioning to that because she wants to be able to spend more time with her patients and be able to discuss other things going on in their life that could be contributing to what they're experiencing. And that's, again, kind of what I do chiropractically and natural health wise. But that's, I want you to go through what I did go through. Are you sleeping well? Are you eating correctly? Are you getting some exercise? Are you doing some things that you enjoy doing? This is something wives and mommies, we sometimes don't take care of ourselves. Are you doing all of those things?
I don't think I've had a really good night's sleep in the past year and a half.
And
I
is it
take
hot?
I take melatonin, I take NyQuil, I've taken Ambien. I just don't sleep, so I've just kind of like given up on that.
Yeah.
I was given a symptom tracker, but I'm to the point where I just want to give up.
Yeah, it is complicated. We women, go figure, are kind of complicated. But I do want you to look at diet also. Higher carbs can actually create anxiety, depression, panic attacks. And I have seen that firsthand with some patients and some family members that, you know, they eat tortillas all the time. They have chips all the time. They just don't have very much protein. And literally going low carb, you don't really have to go no carb. Vegetables have some carbs, but you need to add some meat. And it's very alarming to me that our society is trying to push meat out, saying that it's horrible stuff. And I haven't seen the studies that show that meat is that terrible for you. So I want you to really look at what you're eating, what you're putting into your body. Again, we don't want, if you're not sleeping, you don't want to use a pill for sleep. Obviously, that can end up getting worse and worse and worse. So maybe listen to that show. I'll get it linked up to my rapwellness.com and see if you can get some ideas from that. But that is a very, very important issue that you need to address. I think first is, why are you not sleeping? Maybe you need to go have some acupuncture to calm your system down. Maybe, if you're not under chiropractic care, I know a lot of my patients, when their nervous system is very agitated and very tight and very stressed, it is going to be hard to physically get relaxed. So sometimes doing some adjustments can help to just calm down the nervous system. But those are probably the two biggies, is sleep and diet. And, it is something that almost sounds like, that's what everybody says, but it's because it's true. And it's simple, but it's not easy. Okay. It's simple. Don't put junk in your body. It's not easy, especially if you're working for a living, if you have kids, if you're running around to ball games and whatnot, or activities. It's not easy to be eating well. But I want you to look at, kind of keep track. And that's the same as charting. When you're not looking day to day, hour to hour, what's going on, sometimes you have these things that are happening that you don't even realize are happening. So that's probably where I would begin. A lot of mental health issues do stem from not getting enough sleep and not getting good sleep. So if you have a way of tracking that too, I know the Apple Watch has a certain amount of ability to track sleep and see if you're thrashing around, or, if you're just laying there, eyes wide open. I had some other ideas on our show of how you can work on that. Everybody is different. And that's the complication here, is that I can't just say, okay, this is exactly what you need to do, but you need to try some things that have worked for other people and see if it works for you. When changing your diet, you really need to give it a good 2 weeks. Okay. So don't do 2 days and say it's not working, I'm done. You need to at least do 2 weeks and see if you notice any changes. And maybe you're not going to be 100% then, but you should notice something. But sleep hygiene is really important. And I discussed that in our show, is make sure your environment is set for good sleep and not, watching TV or being on your iPad right before you go to bed. And there are some very simple things you can start with. But I tell my patients, that's why they call you a patient. You have to be patient with your body. Generally, it's not going to transition, all at once overnight. It takes some effort, but it's well worth it, especially with this sleep thing. So sleep and diet is probably the first thing I would work on and see if you notice any changes. And again, it's easy. It's simple. It's not easy. So understand that we understand, because we've been through it ourselves, and we see lots of people who go through it. So cut yourself some slack and give yourself some grace, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in your body. There is. And it does feel like you just are having this war going on constantly in your brain, in your body, in your digestive tract. There's a lot that's happening. So do little things daily and see where it gets you. And then anything that you do notice changes, well, continue that for sure. But just start with 1 or 2 things. Don't go with everything that I just talked about. Just start with one or two things and give it a couple weeks at least and see what happens to you. But yes, I actually do some virtual visits. I have through my chiropractic office, I have a HIPAA compliant virtual office, and that's how I do virtual visits. I've worked with people all over the country on these. So, if you just wanted to sit and chat for a while, then you can contact me through our website. There's a place that you can ask questions and then leave me your information and I can contact you. Or my email address is Dr. Maria, DRMARIA, at CW.
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second. Dr. Maria at what?
Yeah, DRMARIA at CWCKS.com.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Maria.
Of course.
Hello, Dr. Moran. Good to hear from you. You're always such a great encourager. So I've been doing the NFP charting for years, and is it an easy transition from what I already know into the menopause charting and what that deals with on that end of it?
Yes, because you know your patterns, your post-peak number of days, the number of days you normally have bleeding, the type of bleeding you normally have, if you have bleeding in between. And so when you start seeing changes in those patterns, that's when you have to start addressing those patterns, particularly the post-peak number of days, because remember it's supposed to be within 2 days each month. If you start noticing that's where you can first start to begin. And then you don't have to wait until you have mega symptoms. You can start noticing what your patterns look like. Maybe you have more mucus days, some patches of mucus. So that might be things are changing. And so you're going to start to have that knowledge ahead of time and then start to address it right away.
So just like our beginning NFP charting and that kind of stuff, is there classes that we take for this and the things that are explained with that then also? Is that kind of what you do too? No?
It's normal. It's the same charting for somebody who's perimenopausal as somebody who is trying to avoid. You're just looking at fertile and infertile days. You're looking at your patterns.
Makes
bleeding
sense.
Patterns, post-peak, all of that.
Okay.
So you are all the knowledge you need. You just have to be watchful for your patterns changing. And that's when your body's starting to indicate, hey, we're getting a little tired here.
Okay.
Yes.
Yay.
Great to see you.
Thanks.
You are welcome. Lindy, are you there?
I'm here. So I want to thank everyone for joining today's presentation and for anyone that might watch this recording that we post after the fact. This was part of the Diocese of Salina's Fertility Care Center. It was part of our celebration of National Fertility Care Week a couple of weeks ago, and we got delayed with some technical difficulties, so we brought it back. And so thank you for hanging in there with us and being patient as we got it rescheduled. Dr. Rapp and myself are both practitioners in our center, and we have 6 other ladies that serve the Salina Diocese and just kind of that general area of Kansas. Although we teach for the Diocese of Salina, it is not exclusive. You do not have to be a Catholic. We will teach any woman that comes through our door. We are happy to help every woman learn more about their body, their fertility, their health. So please feel free to share the information today with those that you love and care about. Maria and myself both do teach virtually, as well as our other practitioners, so you don't have to be in Kansas. It's okay. There also are many practitioners across the country and across the world, so we might even be able to help you find someone in your area that you could work with locally. So you would have that in-person option with someone local or a virtual option with one of us. I'm going to put in the chat a couple websites. One is salinafertilitycare.org. And that's our website where you can get information just in general about fertility care. But you can also see the information about each one of our practitioners in the diocese. And then the other website is fertilitycare.org. So you notice a theme there, fertility care. That is just our nationwide access to and even worldwide access to fertility care practitioners like Maria and I, but also the medical consultants. She mentioned Dr. Amy. That's the local medical consultant we have here in the Salina, Kansas area, but we have those doctors all over the place. So there's great access to those, and you can find that listing on that website. And I would just encourage you to reach out if you're needing something or pass that information on. Again, thank you. Thank you, Maria, for taking time out of your practice today and seeing patients, spending your lunch hour doing this with us. And it's just a delight. And so thank you once again for being a part of our presentation. And you can look at that salinafertilitycare.org website. Hopefully by the end of the week, I'll have this video and the one we did a couple weeks ago on teen charting. So what we really did with this week to celebrate fertility care was kind of look at the beginning and the end of those reproductive years, and just areas where people don't realize this applies. We think of it as just strictly family planning, but there are many aspects to healthcare that fertility care helps with. So thank you for joining us, and thank you, Maria. Have a great day.